leading up to this analogy, I really couldn't explain why I was feeling all the symptoms. I couldn't put a finger on it. I had zero idea what was going on. And if I thought I had an idea, it would change the following week. One week I thought I was dealing with Parkinson's disease at 21 years old because I couldn't stop shaking in bed. The next week I was convinced I had Lyme disease. I'm ordering all these tests, and it was just a never-ending merry-go-round symptoms. How's it going, Thrivers? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how your hypersensitive nervous system is kind of like trying to drive a car without brakes. Now, I've actually made a video about this in the past. You can actually click the video up here. Now, as somebody who has been very sick with dozens and dozens of debilitated symptoms that the doctors just couldn't explain, I was in your shoes. I was very lost. I was confused, very scared and frustrated because no doctors could figure out what was going on and no doctors could help me until I saw a doctor after, I can't remember, it was my 30th or 40th doctor I saw. This is when I was in the hospital, I was in the ICU. They couldn't figure anything out. Finally, by luck of the draw, luck of the universe, I got paired up with this doctor who essentially taught me the principles of recovery, a lot of things that I teach on this channel. Now, there's one analogy that really helped me understand what was going on, because leading up to this analogy, I really couldn't explain why I was feeling all the symptoms. I couldn't put a finger on it. I had zero idea what was going on. And if I thought I had an idea, it would change the following week. One week I thought I was dealing with Parkinson's disease at 21 years old because I couldn't stop shaking in bed. The next week I thought I had adrenal failure, or stage 3 or stage 4 adrenal fatigue. The next week, I was convinced I had Lyme disease. I'm ordering all these tests, and it was just a never-ending merry-go-round of symptoms and potential illnesses that I could have been dealing with. And so it was a very stressful time for me. As I know you can understand, you're probably dealing with this right now if you're watching this video. There's not really anywhere else to turn to, but the biggest thing, I think, in addition to just the physical symptoms, because we all know the physical symptoms are very difficult to deal with, very challenging. It's actually terrifying. It felt like my body was trying to kill me most days. But the other really frustrating part was I just didn't understand what was going on. There was no explanation whatsoever that made sense. How come some days I was feeling better, some days I was feeling worse, some days I could look at my phone for 3 hours? Other days, 10 minutes would completely wipe me out. And so when my doctor broke this down for me, he gave me this analogy. And the analogy was the way my nervous system and my brain was functioning right now, it was in a very, very hypersensitive state. It was as if I was trying to drive a Formula One car. And if you don't know what a Formula One car is, I'm gonna show a picture right over here. It's like trying to drive that car through a busy downtown city. Let's just take New York City, for example, where there's stoplights, there's pedestrians, there's bikers everywhere, right? Driving a normal car is difficult in the city. There's so many things that could potentially go wrong, so many accidents that could happen in a normal car. Now imagine trying to take a Formula One car, something that it's like a jet plane compared to a normal commercial airplane, right? You just barely tap on the pedal in this Formula One car and the car will go flying. You barely touch the steering wheel and turn it a little bit, it's gonna do like a 90-degree turn. And so it's nearly impossible to drive that thing in a busy downtown area without hitting something. So he was saying that's kind of like how my nervous system was functioning at that time. It became so hypersensitive that anything could really trigger it. Any kind of stimulus on the nervous system, it caused it to overreact, right? Just like a Formula One car. And he said, the way your nervous system is supposed to function, it's supposed to be adaptable to different situations. It's not supposed to be this sensitive. Normal people, they can see bright lights, they can hear sound, they can go to concerts, things like that. But if I were to be popped into a concert, at the time I couldn't walk, but if someone put me in a wheelchair, rolled me into the concert, my nervous system would have gone haywire, because it was just so hypersensitive. That helped explain a lot of the symptoms I was feeling. It helped explain why sometimes I would stand up just a little bit too fast and it would cause a whole series of symptoms. It would cause a multi-week flare-up. At the time, I thought it was a crash, but it was really just an adjustment period. And if you don't know the difference between adjustment periods and crashes or haven't seen that video, then I recommend you click that video up here where I break that down. But essentially, every time I was feeling these symptoms, it was no longer a mystery anymore. I understood why. It's because my nervous system was so hypersensitive. Now, what caused it to get hypersensitive? That's where he taught me things about the stress threshold, right? And I actually have a breakdown of this in the Recovery Foundation's masterclass. It's a completely free 7-day program that I've put together. You can click the link down below. Again, it's completely free, but essentially my stress threshold was maxed out. There's only so much stress and stimulation that our nervous systems or brains can handle. And once we reach that maximum threshold, that's when we start to feel the physical symptoms in our body. Okay, so the symptoms are very real. The symptoms are not in your head. The symptoms are essentially a limiter that your body places on you to reduce the amount of stress or stimulus that you're placing on your body. Again, I break this down in depth in the Recovery Foundation's masterclass on day 1. But this analogy, it helped put my mind at ease. It helped a lot of the anxiety go away because now, every time I was flaring up, I wasn't thinking worst case scenario. It made sense. I said, oh, okay, this is a hypersensitive nervous system. If I was driving a Formula 1 car, it's kind of like I meant to touch the pedal, but I pressed it a little bit too hard and then I went flying. And then the steering wheel got shaky. I had to dodge something. It just goes from, there's a saying, 0 to 100 real quick. That's like our nervous system. There's only 2 modes. It's either, in freeze mode or complete fight or flight mode. There is no in between. Now, over time, this does get better. Over time, you learn to change from this hypercar, this Formula 1 car, to something like a Honda Civic, a Toyota Corolla, right? Just think of a basic car that is meant for driving in public, not meant for racing on a world-class level, right? And so over time, as you desensitize the nervous system, as you recalibrate it, as you tone down that sensitivity on your nervous system, through neuroplasticity exercises, you're going to be able to tolerate more. And you do change from that Formula 1 car to something like a Honda Civic. I'm just using Honda Civic as an example. Now, the cool thing is you'll also be able to turn it on. You could turn your hypersensitive nervous system back on in a good way. Not in a way that it's feeling symptoms and all of these different things, but in a way that, let's say it's time to perform. Let's say you're an athlete. You can get to a point where you can flip that switch and you can operate at a high level. You can tap into that kind of Formula 1 car mode without feeling those symptoms. But when you're a Formula 1 car all the time, that's when you can start to run into problems. Because imagine driving like a race car all day, every day, right? The car is going to break down. The gears are going to start to become loose. Things start falling apart. It's a lot of stress on the car, on the chassis, on the bolts, everything, okay? So there is a time and place for it, right? And maybe at the time you did get sick, yes, you reached your maximum stress threshold and it was an appropriate response for your body at the time because it was trying to protect you. But the problem is it stays stuck in that mode, right? And to normal people, they'll get that fight or flight. They'll get into that survival response, but their body knows how to self-regulate back to normal. And that's the thing with CFS or long COVID or fibromyalgia. Our body, our response takes on a life of its own. It's very common to downward spiral when it comes to symptoms and just being stuck in the survival mode. So over time, this does improve. It does take quite a bit of work. It's kind of like trying to change your engine in a car. Right? You don't just snap your fingers and the engine changes, right? The software doesn't just change. You have to replace the engine or swap it out for a more normal functioning engine. You got to update some of the software, and that takes time. It does take some manual work to override those things and swap out that engine. And essentially that's what we're trying to do here with your hypersensitive nervous system. As long as you have tests and scans that show that there are no other causes for your symptoms, and also the doctors don't have any other solutions for you, this would be the way to approach it, or at least the way that's been helping so many people around the world overcome CFS and overcome long COVID and overcome fibromyalgia. So you need to do some manual work in recalibrating your brain, which controls your nervous system, which controls every function in your body. And this is why a lot of times you can try dealing with these surface level, or they seem like deep issues, but they really are the surface level issues. Things like food intolerance, things like chronic pain, headaches, migraines, things like that, insomnia, anxiety, even mood swings and depression. A lot of these things can be caused by a hypersensitive nervous system issue. Now, I say they can be caused because there's no way for me to tell you that, hey, this 100% is coming from a hypersensitive nervous system. So by all means, go do your tests, do your scans with the doctors, try different solutions. But when you run out of options, I would really consider thinking about this approach, because this hypersensitive nervous system issue can be the root cause of what you're dealing with. So anytime you're feeling anxious, anytime you're feeling like you're a bit lost or you have no explanation for the symptoms, just think about that Formula One car analogy. And when I thought of that, it really helped calm my anxiety down, especially when I was flaring up. I would imagine that I stepped on the gas a little bit too hard and I scraped a sidewalk. I might have hit a trash can, but that's okay. You know, as long as you don't total the car, you're okay. Because we can upgrade these parts, we can repair them. But what we're trying to do here is recalibrate your nervous system. Essentially, it's swapping out that very powerful engine, the thing that's a little bit too powerful, and updating that software. That's really what I wanted to share in this video. It's an analogy that really helped stop me from downward spiraling when it came to experiencing flare-ups. And if you needed some help with this, if you needed some help recalibrating your nervous system, you can check out the link down below, the Recovery Foundation's masterclass. It's going to help you go from a Formula One car that's trying to drive in the city without hitting anything to swapping that engine out, updating that software to something like a Honda Civic, right? It's going to show you how to do that without crashing, without having major flare-ups, and while giving you a roadmap to make consistent progress, so that way you're not going 2 steps forward and 3 steps back like a lot of people do when dealing with these kind of issues. So that's what I wanted to share today. I've referenced a few different resources and videos. Again, all of these are completely free. Hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if this one made sense and if you find the analogies pretty helpful. If you do, then I'm going to share more analogies on this channel. Always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.
I would say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal.
I actually felt like somebody had an answer, like somebody explained what was going on and it all clicked.